Okay, amazing. Allow me to introduce you guys, Fabio Nottet, founder of AI agency in Amsterdam, Europe's first creative AI agency. He designs AI native visual campaigns, brand identities, helping customers and clients to unlock smarter workflows and creative storytelling. In his talk, he will talk about how generative AI lowered the barrier of creativity. The title of the talk is The Creative Resonance, how AI is democratizing imagination. Thank you, Fabio.
All right. Hi, everyone. I have to be honest, when I saw that I was presenting on the first day in the morning, I wasn't really sure if a lot of people would show up. So really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for each and everyone who's here. And whether you're my friend or whether you're someone who saw the title, The Creative Renaissance, and thought, what the hell is that? I like to see that. Thank you so much. So I'm Fabio. I work as an AI creative, and I bring ideas to life using artificial intelligence. And I think that what I do, but also what you're all doing, whether you're a founder or whether you're a coder with too many tabs open, is all part of a story that is 1,000 years in the making. And this is a story about power. It's a story about the power of creation. And in order to understand why we are in such an interesting time, I'd like to take you a little bit back to where creation began and see where we came from. So, I'm not going to take you back 10 years or 100 years. I want to take you back a couple of thousand years in a period where creativity used to be divine. And what do I mean with that? Well, basically, creativity wasn't just something that anyone could do, because back then, when we talk about 1,000 years ago, creativity took time. It took tools, it took resources. If you wanted to create a sculpture, if you wanted to write a poem, you really needed the time. And most of these people, normal people, they didn't have those, right? They were working hours and hours in the fields just to get a piece of bread on the table. Creativity really was a privilege for monks or philosophers. And even them, they didn't really have a platform, they didn't really have an audience, and it didn't really have a distribution until something happened. The first revolution that came was the printing press, and the printing press democratized words. So imagine, first the Bible was only being able to be read by you by a priest in Latin, and now you could read the Bible by yourself. Now you could understand it by yourself, and this wasn't just about reading, it's about being able to interpret something for yourself, and this increased the spark of revolution. Then photography came, and photography democratized perspective. So where you first could only read words, we all know that an image speaks more than 1,000 words. Now you could actually see about the war that's going on in a distant area. And what's more important is that an image can cross borders and languages, right? If we both don't speak the same language, but we see an image of Diego Maradona, we both know what it means without being able to speak the same language, right? And then recently, in our lifetime, we got digital tools, and these democratized production. So now anyone with internet, now anyone with a laptop can create a video on YouTube, you can, produce on SoundCloud, and you don't need a production studio, you don't need a publisher. And this is all very exciting, but still, what you needed was the skill to create. But now that is changing because Gen AI is democratizing imagination itself. We're moving from thinking to prompting, and from prompting to building. So what do I mean with that? Well, for example, I'm a guy, I have a lot of ideas in my head, but when I try to visualize them, when I try to draw them, you'd think I'm a 4-year-old, like I can't draw at all. But now I can use AI to draw for me. Now I can use AI to create for me. So what you see now is people using platforms like Lovable, Krea, Replit, and Midjourney. You can code without being able to know about coding. You can build prototypes fastly, and this is a creative renaissance that I'm talking about, because this democratizes the way that anyone with an idea can now endlessly build. And when creativity becomes cheap to scale, the risk of failure becomes cheap too. So what does that mean? Well, right now you can endlessly, you only need access to internet and a laptop, and you can endlessly iterate, you can endlessly create prototypes until you find the right fit for your company. And I think this is very exciting, and this is a very beautiful time to be alive. But every renaissance also comes with its downsides, right? Which I call the noise. And my good friend Gianluca talked about deepfakes over there, and that's also part of this. So what is noise? Noise is when you use AI for replication instead of imagination. It's when you surrender your vision to the machine without thinking. So for example, I've seen this a couple of months ago. Ballerina cappuccina, chimpanzini, bananini, tralalero, tralala, bombardio, crocodile. Now, I'm not Italian, right? But I know a little bit of Italian. And when I see this, I get confused. I'm like, is this Italian? I ask my friends, and they're like, ma Fabio, che stai a di? Questo non è italiano, sai? This is called, for the people who don't know, this is called Italian brain world, and this is AI generated content which replicates a lot of fake Italian sounding names, fake Italian sounding aesthetics, but it doesn't really mean anything, it doesn't really add any value. It's just a whole lot of noise that confuses people. Another example is the M dash, and I'm sure when you open LinkedIn, 50% of the posts that you see contain this dash. And when you see that, or at least I see it, I think, this person didn't really create it themselves. They used AI to create it for them. And it's not a bad thing per se, but when you surrender your own vision to make your LinkedIn post more professional, you're still replicating, and people might not see you as authentic. So this is a big problem, but this is not the problem of AI itself. When aesthetics are automated, we lose originality. When AI is used without imagination, it becomes noise. But it's a choice, right? If you choose to use AI for imagination instead of replication, very cool and beautiful things start to happen, which I call the human edge. So, what is this human edge that I'm talking about? Well, in order to understand that, I'd like you to think about this quote, which says, the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology, it's imagination, right? And of course, I have to agree here, right? I have an iPhone in my pocket, and this is like magical technology, but without the imagination of Steve Jobs, without the imagination of Johnny Ives, we wouldn't have this piece of technology. But even then, anyone could imagine, anyone could have an idea, but there's always an execution gap, right? Anyone can have this idea, but only a few know how to execute. But AI is changing that, because the execution gap is no more, because now AI, and again, I'll bring the example to me. I am someone with ideas. I can draw, but now I can use AI to create images for me. Now a founder can use AI to develop for them. Now our brands can use AI to create content for them, and they don't need a big marketing budget no more. So, to show you a little bit of an example, what is this human edge I'm talking about? You have hopefully seen the visuals of my presentation. I hope you like them, because I created them together with AI personally for this talk. And, I didn't want to just surrender my vision to the AI. I didn't want to just replicate. I wanted to have my own insight into this. So I created a script, and then I thought, all right, what images would resonate with this? Well, my talk is the creative Renaissance, and what is more Renaissance than the hands of Michelangelo, right? I wanted to use them, but I wanted to give my own little perspective to it, and this spirit I really liked. Gradients. So I started to put all of this in a few notes, and I asked, all right, create me a visual that represents the Renaissance, but using these gradients. And of course, I don't create only one image. I want to create more because I want to be able to choose. And I got this. Some are a little bit ugly, I have to say, but this is a good start, right? And this is where the human edge starts, because then you start to endlessly create, you start to endlessly iterate, and you start building other images. So for example, with the Italian brain rot, I wanted to use an example of literally a brain, a human that is rotting because he's using technology or social media too much. And this is how I close my execution gap. But now imagine if I'm not doing this, but a whole company is going to do this, right? We're going to see a new kind of company emerge, AI native, fast, lean. Imagine a brand that's built by a few creatives with a strong taste and vision. Because when AI automates the boring stuff, we have more time for the cool stuff. So imagine companies that are already out there, Cursor, Replit, Midjourney. These are companies that have an insanely high amount of MRR or ARR per employee because they use AI agents to automate all of the boring stuff. And when AI takes care of the repetitive, it leaves room for the remarkable. So I'd like to show a quote by a great friend of mine, Fons. And he says that we're seeing new companies emerge. And these companies will be built by creatives, run by agents, and owned by culture. And what do I mean by that? Well, that means that creative people now, they don't have the costs anymore of lead generation, customer servers, all of these boring input-output stuff can now be run by agents, which means you have more time and more money to spend on actual creation. And if you manage to do that well enough, it'll be owned by culture. And what do I mean with that? Well, I'm sure a lot of you know about vibe coding, right? This is an example of culture where people embrace Replit, where people embrace lovable and create a whole narrative around it. And this is what you want as a brand. You want to be owned by culture, people embracing you. So to take it a little bit back, where I said creativity used to be divine. Well, that same creativity that used to belong only to gods and emperors is now in your hands. And that's pretty cool, right? Like imagine you being able to be God and you can create any idea out of your head. But it's a choice. You need to use AI for imagination instead of replication. And to rise above the noise that we've talked about, we have to stay human. We need the human edge. Because AI can reflect the world, but only you can see it differently. And this doesn't mean just staying behind a screen and watching soulless AI content. No, I really mean is go outside and see the real world. So really, I'd like to say go touch grass, go see new movies, go fall in love, go travel, go see beautiful Napoli, because all of these unique insights will be data that will feed into your imagination. And that's what you will need in the end, because AI has democratized words, the printing press democratized words, photography democratized perspective, and we've seen digital tools democratizing production, but now imagination, that's the only part that is left, and that is up to you. What are you going to create? You have an idea in your head? Well, why aren't you building it yet? So I'd like to end with a question to you. What are you going to Imagine. And that was it for today. Grazie mille. Thank you so much for listening to my talk.
Thank you, Fabio. Really insightful. Yeah.